Today we're talking about line and angle relationships. We're going to review a few of the angle relationships that you learned previously, and then we'll get into some new material. So the first thing we're going to talk about is vertical angles. Vertical angles are opposite angles formed by intersecting lines. So for example, angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. So angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical. That means that angle 2 and angle 4 are also vertical. And what's important to remember is that vertical angles are congruent. So if angle 2 were 80 degrees, then angle 4 would also be 80 degrees. And if angle 1 were 100 degrees, then angle 3 would be 100 degrees. So vertical angles are congruent. Okay, let's look at the next type of angles. Complementary angles. The sum of the measures of complementary angles is 90 degrees. So complementary angles are going to be 90 degrees. So if you look at angle ABD, so that's angle ABD, and angle DBC are complementary because 50 and 40, the sum of 50 and 40 is 90. You may also see complementary angles that are not adjacent to one another, something like this, and where this says that this is 60 degrees and this is 30 degrees. Those would also be complementary because they add up to 90 degrees. So these are adjacent, these are not, but they're still complementary because the sum of their angles is 90 degrees. Okay, our next type of angle relationship is supplementary. The sum of the measures of supplementary angles is 180 degrees. So angle 1 here and angle 2 are supplementary angles. Angle 2 and angle 3 are also supplementary. And you could keep going. Angle 1 and angle 4 are also supplementary. And angle 4 and 3 are supplementary. So if angle 1 were 110 degrees, then angle 2 would have to be 70 degrees. Which would then also mean, and you can look at the rules for vertical angles and supplementary angles, that if angle 2 were 70 degrees, then angle 3 would have to be 110 degrees. And those two are also vertical angles. Angle 2 is a vertical angle with angle 4, so that would be 70 degrees. So this is 70 plus 110, that's 180, 180, 180, 180. Okay, here are a few more terms, review terms. Lines that intersect at right angles are called perpendicular lines. Two lines in a plane that never intersect or cross are called parallel lines. And then a new term that you haven't learned yet, a line that intersects two or more other lines is called a transversal. Transversal. And we're going to look and see what that looks like, a transversal. Okay, so 8 angles are formed that have special names. 4 interior angles lie inside the two lines, and 4 exterior angles lie outside the two lines. So these two lines are parallel. Remember, there's a little symbol. Sometimes there'll be two here. These are parallel lines. They don't always have to be parallel to have a transversal. So these are my parallel lines, and this is my transversal. So let's talk about what kind of angles these are. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see all of this. Okay, our first type of angles that we want to talk about are alternate interior angles. Okay, these words give me some clues. Interior is probably a word you're familiar with, where we think about inside. Interior our angles are going to be inside the two parallel lines here. So these are interior angles that lie on opposite sides of the transversal. So this is my transversal here, and I'm looking inside. These are inside the parallel lines here, and they're on opposite sides of the transversal. So let's look at what those angles would be. So angle 2 and angle 7 would be alternate interior angles. Angle 4 and angle 5 would also be alternate interior angles. Okay, alternate exterior angles are exterior angles that lie on opposite sides of the transversal. Okay, so they're exterior angles that are on the opposite sides of the transversal. So if I look at this, angle 1 and angle 8 are outside my two parallel lines. So angle 1 and angle 8 are outside, and they're on the opposite side of the transversal. So angle 1 is above and angle 8 is below, and they're outside. So angle 1 and angle 8. Okay, you might want to take a second and see if you can identify the other set of alternate exterior angles. Okay, hopefully you paused and had a chance to look at that. Angle 3 and angle 6 are also alternate exterior angles. And remember, alternate is telling us they are on opposite sides of the transversal. Exterior tells us they're outside of the parallel lines here. Now, these lines are not always going to be parallel in the examples that we look at, but in this case, these are parallel. Okay, our next set are called corresponding angles. You should be familiar with that word, corresponding. These are angles that are in the same position on the two lines in relation to the transversal. Okay, so if I'm looking at this, we have several corresponding angles. Our first corresponding set that we're going to look at are angle 3 and angle 7. If you notice, they are in the same position in relationship to the transversal and my two lines. So angle 3 and angle 7. We also have angle 4 and angle 8. Angle 4 and angle 8. Angle 1 and angle 5. Angle 1 and angle 5. And then also angle 2 and angle 6. Okay, and our last type of angle or relationship is adjacent. Adjacent. And those are just any two angles that are next to one another. And we looked at that when we looked at supplementary angles and complementary angles. So a couple of adjacent angles would be angle 1 and angle 2. Angle 1, angle 2. Also angle 7 and angle 8. Okay, so those are the terms, and we will practice these in class and then actually look at angle measures, but right now we just want to get familiar with the terms. So here we have a figure, and we want to list the pairs of angles. So we want to find all of the adjacent angles. So angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent. Angle 1 and angle 2. We also have angle 2 and angle 4. Remember, adjacent just means next to one another. We have angle 4 and angle 3. You might want to pause here and see if you can fill in the rest of the adjacent angles. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to try those out. We also have angle 3 and angle 1, angle 5 and angle 6, angle 6 and angle 8, angle 8 and 7, angle 7 and 5. Those are all of our adjacent angles. They're angles that are right beside each other. And I like to think of adjacent as in the classroom next door to you that shares a wall. That is an adjacent classroom. So think about it as they're sharing a wall. Okay, alternate interior. If you would like to pause, you might want to try and see if you can do these on your own and then check back with the answers. Or you can work through it with me and pause it anytime you want to try it on your own. But I'm going to move quickly through these. So alternate interior. We want to look inside the two lines. This is our transversal. We don't really know if these are parallel or not. They didn't give us any kind of sign that they were, so we don't have to worry about that. And this is our transversal. So we're looking inside these two lines here, and they need to be on opposite sides of the transversal. So angle 4 and angle 5 are alternate interior. And angle 3 and angle 6. And if you put angle 6 and angle 3, that's fine. It's the same thing. Now we want to look at alternate exterior. So again, alternate means on the opposite side of the transversal, but exterior is telling us on the outside of these two lines. So for the first alternate exterior, we have 1 and 8. And angle 7 and angle 2. For the vertical, we have several vertical. We've got angle 1 and 4, angle 2 and 3, angle 5 and 8, and angle 6 and 7. Okay, so in class we will be looking more deeply into this, but right now if you can get a basic idea of the vocabulary associated with line and angle relationships, you'll be good to go.